Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa. Haere mai ki tēnei hui, te iwi o rangatane, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. And welcome everybody to this Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee meeting for the 13th of April. A few housekeeping elements as we get started. Elected members will be very familiar with these by now. But for the benefit of all in the room, the meeting is being recorded and will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. All participants, if you could keep your cameras turned on and microphones muted, please, unless addressing the meeting. Councillors will be using the hands up function as normal. If you have any amendments, please email those to the committee administrators. As we go through the meeting, recommendations to the meeting will be displayed on the screen. And if that's not possible, then I'll read it from the agenda paper. Voting will be done by a raised hand today, please, unless a division is called for. If you would like to call for a division, then please pop that in the chat function and governance will manage that for us. Councillors, I'll be obviously inviting you to speak using your name. Presenters and staff members, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and anybody with you as we move to your slot in the agenda, that will be really helpful, especially for the people online. Thank you. So we will make a start with the order paper in front of us, which starts with apologies. And I do have some apologies, which I will ask Natalia to pop up on the screen. Then I will move those. So the apologies, the committee resolved that the apologies be received from the Mayor, who's absent on council business, Councillors Lou Finlay, Orfeh Michalad for early departure, Susan Beattie and Alicia Rutherford for late arrival. I will move those and seek a seconder from the limited options on screen. Councillor Barrett, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Barrett. And then if we pop the resolution off so I can see the full screen, and I will ask those in favour. Oh, sorry, Leonie Harpeter has arrived in there.
Sorry, Councillor Bowen. Sorry, Madam Chair. I just wanted to put him for early departure. Sorry.
Okay. No, thank you, Councillor Harpeter. That's been included. So I've moved that recommendation. It was seconded by Councillor Barrett. If all those in favour would raise their hands, please. Anybody against? Or any abstentions? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Natalia. On the order of business, number 2, notification of additional items. I'm not aware of any. Elected members, are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Dingwall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an interest in item 6.
A conflict of interest?
Sorry, yes, a conflict of interest in item 6.
Thank you. Noted. No, nobody else. Thank you. Item 4 is public comment. I'm not aware of any other members of the public apart from those who are making presentations online. So I will assume there are none of those, and we will move to item 5, which is our first presentation from the Design School. And we have Mike Sewell with us, who's the director of the Design School. Mike, you've presented to council before, but perhaps not quite like this. I can't remember if you've been an online one for us, but the usual rules apply. So you have 10 minutes for your presentation, and then we'll open, if elected members have any questions, we'll open the virtual floor at that point. So Mike, if I can hand over to you for your presentation on the Design School, please.
Thank you very much. I can just very quickly share. So just to check, are you seeing the single slide?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, my name's Mike Sable. I'm the director of the design school based here in Palmerston North. We were established back in 1993 as a specialist foundation provider. Students can achieve NZQA qualifications and a portfolio that prepares them for higher study at any of the diploma or degree courses around the country. We have 4 locations here in Palmerston North, which was established in 1993. We set up a Whangarei campus and 2 prison locations several years ago. But unfortunately, due to COVID, the Manawatu and Arahata prison programs are on pause at the moment, just while the prison population has changed so dramatically that student numbers are really low. We've maintained the highest quality assurance rating of Category 1 from NZQA since their external evaluation review system was established in 2009. We attract creative people, people who either know exactly what they want to do and they want a dedicated fast track to achieve their goals, or they're looking for an alternative to school. So as such, most of our student population is in that younger 16 to 24 age group. And generally speaking, the disadvantaged or traditionally disadvantaged ethnicities of Māori and Pacifica are double the population of the areas that we operate in. Importantly though, those students achieve as well as any other students on our programs, which is one of the reasons we maintain that high category rating. I know arts and culture covers both design, arts and culture and education. So I'm going to do a bit of a bounce around between the two since I'm immersed in both worlds. And I'll start with education, which, like so many large government-controlled sectors, it's been under considerable reform for the last several years. It's almost like they took everything that we do in education from primary school almost to university level, tipped it all out on the table and have been rearranging it for several years, coming up with new ways of doing things. The ones that impact us are the major review of Ncea, which is both delivery and assessment. And of course, that's happening at speed alongside the New Zealand Curriculum Review, which is the what and how we teach in New Zealand. In amongst that, they're coming up with some really cool new things like the Vocational Entrance Award, which is recognition that vocational education is now pretty much comparable to a university qualification. And as such, it's the Vocational Entrance Award is going to be comparable to university entrance. The review of vocational education, the Rove review for all qualifications at levels 1 to 6, so we of course are slow bang in the middle of that. Although the big one, the merging of the polytechs into Pukenga, is somewhat separate to us. As a private school, we are a little bit isolated from that, but it's going to change the tertiary education landscape quite dramatically. We know, for example, that they are preparing unified programs to deliver across the country with the vision that students could move from one Te Pukenga campus to another and carry on their qualifications and courses whenever they choose. So that'll be a significant change to how we operate in New Zealand. But the greatest thing for the creative sector has been the development of the Workforce Development Councils, especially Toi Mai, which is now New Zealand's very first organisation focused on the creative industries and employment in the creative industries in New Zealand. It's always amazed me how undervalued the creative sectors have been in New Zealand. So for the last 15 years or so, whenever I get a chance to talk to somebody, I talked about the reliance of all industries on the creative sector for any form of success. I've worked with Ministry of Education, Ncea on the creative industries vocational pathways initiatives, and the diagram you're seeing there is the vocational pathways for Ncea levels 1, 2 and 3, which now includes the creative industries. It was a couple of years after all the others were created, but now it sits quite firmly alongside all the other pathways that are promoted across New Zealand's education. In 2017, there was one of the single biggest pieces of research done on the creative industries in New Zealand, and it really rocked central government around how much value there is of the sector to New Zealand. Until this report came out, you know, artists, designers, musicians were lumped into that group of people who did cool stuff. They had a great lifestyle, but they usually had another job which paid the bills. What this report showed was that designers in New Zealand make up a bigger industry than all of agriculture combined. 120,000 designers a year in 2017, growing at over 10% a year. To give that some context, all of agriculture generates just under $10 billion of GDP, with 83,000 people employed. So design was really streets ahead of anything people were expecting. So then on top of that, we have a whole bunch of other sectors that make up the creative industries. Design was by far the biggest, 76% of everybody. And you'll see by this chart that there will be an awful lot of crossovers. People in photography doing visual arts, or people in film and TV doing photography or being involved in performing arts. But again, design itself became one of the big focuses for employment going forward. This is one of my favourite quotes. We didn't have money, so we had to think, from Ernest Rutherford. I think that really epitomises how creative skills are just part of our DNA. But that creative is normal attitude has made the industry really difficult to see in comparison to high profile sectors like the primary industries or building and constructions. And it hides what is a very professional and a very difficult career to be successful in. Our job at the design school is to help people harness all those skills and turn it into sustainable careers. We do it at the foundation level with preparation that they'll move on to the higher education where they get all those degree or diploma level skills. There's lots of change happening. The education system is changing dramatically, but what we're seeing is that the pathways are not changing. People are still going through senior secondary school or foundation programs like ours onto diploma and degree courses, and even if they are in that 70% who make up the self-employed, they're taking all of those skills and applying them in an entrepreneurial context. The industry requirements haven't changed much for a long time either. The technology changes, how we work changes. But generally speaking, everything has stayed consistent for a while now. The design school itself has been through massive changes over the last nearly 30 years. but everything we do has a student focus. So we keep that in front of our mind, and people will keep moving forward so that with the skills that they need for success. With Toi Mai now, we're going to have a really strong structure for building an industry that is recognised, well respected, and will have a massive impact on New Zealand's economy going forward. Thank you so much. Appreciate the opportunity to present to you.
Thank you, Mike. That was precision timing. I will open to questions from colleagues, and I see there's at least one in the queue. I just wanted to go back first, Mike, and ask, you mentioned higher study and that a number of your students move on into that from the design school. What kind of percentage move on into higher study from their studies with you?
Approximately 85% of our students who complete qualifications will go on to higher level study.
So 85% who complete. What kind of percentage don't complete?
Depending on the levels, 15 to 30%. So at level 3 and 4, the qualification completion is very high, and they're 80 to 85%. The lower levels are level 2, where we have a lot of students who are re-engaging with education. That's where, unfortunately, we still see a number of students leaving, up to 30% a year leaving before they've achieved the qualification. Those students, though, we track them, and they are going on to other courses of study or on to entry-level employment, maybe in retail or other industries where there is demand at the moment.
Thank you. A question from Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mike. Really interesting presentation. You said 120,000 designers. What is the definition of a designer?
That's a really good question, Councillor. The design as a profession has been largely taken up by graphic designers and product designers. People who are solving problems for people in a creative way, usually with a elegant technical solution to their problem. It's separated from visual arts, where a visual artist is more focused on that expression and then hoping that they have an audience and a client who is willing to purchase their product at the end. Designers apply the same skills, but with a client focus at the beginning.
Right. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Right. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks, Mike, for the presentation. Always great to get a reminder of the incredible things happening in the city, and your school is a fine example of that. Just a couple questions. One builds on the chair's questions around next steps for students. Do you, especially for those that go through to other parts of the education ecosystem, do you have any data that kind of traces through to final placements into employment? And if so, any sort of insight in terms of how much of that sits at a local, national, and international level?
I don't have a breakdown of the data for local versus national. The Tertiary Education Commission, who fund our programs, keep a close track on everybody and everything. And part of that data was long-term employment outcomes. And so we know that after 7 to 9 years from leaving our programs, 85% of our graduates are employed here in New Zealand or overseas. 85% are employed or overseas. And approximately 25% of those we believe are overseas. but it means that, yes, students are going on to sustainable careers once they have achieved their qualifications.
Great, thank you. Second and final question is just, Mike, you were reflecting on some of the changes in the tertiary sector, and it sounded to me like you felt like perhaps some of the private institutes and private businesses might be getting a bit buffeted by that in terms of some of the bigger changes in the system. Is there any collective or grouping amongst private tertiary providers to begin to provide a voice back into the system?
Yes, there is, Councillor. There are national organisations such as Independent Tertiary Education New Zealand, which most of the providers in Palmerston North are members of, and they provide a national voice back to central government. But there is also a local group of providers who meet every couple of months, who share knowledge and experience in the local region and provide that local voice for the regional needs.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Mike, could I just ask, you mentioned briefly that you've stepped away for the moment with your work in prisons. I wondered if you would just say more about that. You mentioned that there's been a change in prison populations, which has resulted in a reduction of numbers.
Yeah.
Can you say more about that?
It's an odd situation where the prison population at the moment seems to be bursting at the seams, but the number of students are not available. So what's happened during COVID is the justice system has slowed right down. And within the prison system behind the wire, there are multiple classifications of prisoners, and only low and medium risk sentenced prisoners are able to engage in tertiary education programs. There are then high risk prisoners who are usually working on justice enhancing programs. But there are plenty of prisoners who are currently on remand who are unsentenced. So for example, and those students or those prisoners are not able to engage in tertiary education programs until they become a sentenced prisoner. When we started at Manawatu Prison, approximately 30% of their prison population, less than 20% of their prison population, so around about 70 to 80 of their 300 prisoners were on remand and unsentenced. It's currently more than half. So over 160 of their prisoners are currently unsentenced, which then meant our pool of potential students dropped from a couple of hundred down to maybe 60 or 70. And we went from full classes of 10 students at a time to 1 or 2 students at a time, which just unfortunately was not able to be financially viable. We saw the same thing happen at Arahata Prison. It was across the board. It was totally unexpected.
Thank you. That goes to show the effects of COVID are cropping up in all kinds of unexpected places. I wouldn't have thought that would have had that impact on you, and I don't think that's something that's been shared with us in that way before, so thank you for bringing that out in your presentation. There are no further questions from elected members, so that wraps up your time in the hot seat. Mike, thank you again for coming to share with us. I think, for me, I enjoy hearing from you, but I also think it's important that we hear from the design school as a really unique element of how we operate as Palmerston North. It's not something that I see across the country, and we're grateful to your contribution into our arts education space generally. So, elected members, I will direct you to the recommendation in front of us, which is that the Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee receive the presentation for information. I'm happy to move that, and we'll seek a seconder. Councillor Butt, I see your hand, thank you. And elected members, when the recommendation drops off the screen and we're back to faces, I will ask you to vote, please, by raising your hand. So all those in favour and against, abstentions, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for joining us today. You're very welcome to stay online if you'd like to, or to move on to your busy day. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors. It's an absolute privilege to present to this group. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Our next presentation is from Manawatu People's Radio. Councillor Dingwall has declared a conflict of interest with that one. And I will invite Fraser Gregg, Station Manager, to join us. Fraser is no stranger to this forum, but perhaps, I'm not quite sure if you've presented for MPR before. Fraser, I'm sure you'll tell us about that. And Fraser is outlining how community radio supports the principle of cultural well-being, the outcomes they're achieving, their funding, and any issues or opportunities. So Fraser, you have 10 minutes, and I will hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Just checking that you can hear me and that you can see the slides.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Oh, very good. Tēnā koutou, ko Fraser Gregg aho, ko Criffel te Maunga, ko Te Awa, ko McGregor te Iwi, kei te reo irarangi o na tangata o Manawatu, aho I Mahiana. As the chairperson said, I am from Manawatu People's Radio. Mati rongo ka mohio, mati mohio ka marama, mati marama ka matau, mati matau ka ora. A proverb that says, through listening comes awareness, through awareness comes understanding, through understanding comes knowledge, through knowledge comes life and well-being, something that I think speaks to the strength of access media as it is today. Also, I'm in complete horror that someone from the design school is now going to witness my slides. My apologies to your sensibilities, Mr. Sewell. Before I get in proper, a moment to acknowledge the passing of Dr. Kat Pausé on the 25th of March this year, a respected academic, a valued content creator on Manawatu People's Radio, a pioneering force in the humanities, and an authentic Texan living in Papaioia, although she was a staunch convert to the Jandal. Kat was a good example of the empowerment MPR can provide anyone in our community. Through the use of our local access media station, Kat became the principal voice and researcher in her chosen field. It was a remarkable achievement, and I know she was incredibly proud of what she had achieved through her association with us and indeed beyond. Access media in Aotearoa is media created by, for and about communities of interest. These may be communities united by music interests, perhaps hobbies, languages and cultures, ages, or any other demographic that you care to think of. And broadcasting legislation embeds the need for such content in our society, ensuring a range of content is available for certain communities. And I turn your attention to Section 36C of the Broadcasting Act. This is the act by which we secure our New Zealand On Air funding, providing content that attracts these audiences. I don't like it. It was written in 1989, so I prefer to define it as those marginalised on the basis of gender or sexuality, youth and children, those with additional needs, culturally and linguistically diverse or called communities, diverse religious and ethical beliefs, and the disenfranchised, marginalised or minority communities. This is an important takeaway from today. Any ideas, any content, any collaboration that fits within these areas is of great interest to MPR. And by engaging in and supporting the creation of content that aligns with these, we better secure our New Zealand On Air funding and indeed our future. There are 12 access media stations in New Zealand, and Palmerston North has Manawatu People's Radio, a vibrant grassroots not-for-profit station. And since 1997, we've offered a media platform to the diverse range of community groups and individuals in our region who otherwise have little or no access to the media. We also champion local music on air and in the community throughout the year. As a rule, MPR doesn't make radio programmes and podcasts. We provide the opportunities, the facilities, the support and the training needed for community groups and individuals to make their own programmes that reflect their views and values. Why? Our vision is for independent, accessible media, amplifying diverse and local voices, contributing to positive community growth in our region. And that's an important distinction. It speaks to access media as not simply being one thing to many people, but rather an avenue for community development. An access media station schedule rich in local content obviously encourages diversity, respect, connection, and empowerment. This in turn will contribute to a positive history and heritage for the city, which can be explored in the future in the form of dynamic, audible content. We boast 2 broadcast industry standard studios, 2 further portable studios, thanks to the Central Energy Trust for the funding, and a range of bespoke mobile apps options that ensure making content, particularly in the pandemic environment, has never been easier. Speaking of the pandemic, I ripped this graph out of an internal report, but you can see quite clearly that we coped admirably over the past couple of years, maintaining a strong financial position without bailouts, thanks to our resilient business model, and catering to the community need in a way that was evidently required through the delivery of hyper-local information and escapism in niche media. And you can see these are listener trends, obviously peaks in the lockdown and when Auckland moved to level 3, people wanting to know for certain what that meant. And I know a number of councillors, the mayor and a number of council staff in the EOC were part of the content that was accessed and is now in Ngatonga Sound and Vision as an archive on how this area responded in the pandemic. Many people will experience NPR through its event support, which has been sparse of late, but amongst our most popular are now the historical Sounds of Summer concerts in the Square and the Esplanade, our suite of New Zealand Music Month activities and individual events such as cultural gatherings and celebrations. It is worth noting that NPR may typically be seen as audio only, but over recent years we've embraced the multi-platform approach as the way the media is going, and successfully publishing video across a range of interests. Some of the captures there you can see, for example, documenting the John Tarleton exhibit in Tamanawa, the River Stop Stories projects in Awapuni, the welcome videos for refugees and migrants with welcoming communities in Red Cross, and the mystery songwriting session for New Zealand Music Month last year, collaborating with Venue 409 and Creative Sounds Incorporated. These are just a mere snapshot of the collaborations that NPR engages in to support our rich art, culture and heritage in this city and indeed the region. Other collaborations include working with the Manawatu Standard, Radio New Zealand, Massey University, the Central Economic Development Agency, Horizons Regional Council, Te Arawa Noa, Palmerston North Community Services Council, libraries, the Globe Theatre, Tamanawa, schools and other tertiary education institutions. Our main collaborative driver is to empower quality storytelling and to ensure those stories are heard. As such, we have roughly 70 programmes on air throughout the year, garnering 215,000 streams and downloads in 2021, according to our platform provider, accessmedia.nz. Further, our AM transmission accumulates 2,900 listeners per week, yes, on AM, with 2,000 of those between 18 and 35 years old. Of those 70 programmes a year, a small sample is displayed on screen, catering to local cultural communities, the disenfranchised, underempowered or underrepresented, communities of interest, religious and ethical groups, and a smattering of current affairs. In 2016, Colmar Brunton surveyed the access media sector for New Zealand On Air and found it to be strong, credible, unique and critical, words taken straight from their executive summary. Its benefits to the community were identified as inclusion, connection, belonging, visibility and empowerment. You'll see some quotes from the report speaking to the importance of the medium across the country, its nature as the hum or heart for locals and fostering appreciation and sharing. Through our event support, which we hope to see return in 2022, our programmes and our outreach and collaborations, we are continually supporting the curation, expansion and recognition of the city's arts, cultures and its heritage. So how can PNCC help? Use us. Come to us with ideas, suggest us to others. The 150th anniversary of the city was a glorious missed opportunity for collaboration and celebration across multiple platforms. You can provide us with a trustee. In order to be kept informed and have a handle on the governance of this outlet, the City Council, through the Mayor's Office, is able to put forward a trustee to sit on the Manawatu Access Radio Charitable Trust. This is written into the trust deed of the station and acknowledges the importance of a number of entities in the makeup of the station and the representation required on the trust board. And share what we do. When we do engage in events and share our activities through social media, it is disheartening when our efforts are not shared further, and I do not lay this accusation at the City Council alone, particularly when it is an activity that clearly showcases or celebrates an aspect of the city. Sharing is caring. And you thought I'd ask for money. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Thank you, Fraser. I think you've probably learnt from experience about asking for money. Thank you for your presentation, which I will open to elected members if they have any questions. Just noting that elected members are probably quite familiar with some of the work of NPR. We have at least one content maker amongst us, and many of us have participated in your current affairs offering through coming to be interviewed by yourself, which is a grilling in the hot seat that I'm sure we all very much appreciate. So opening for questions, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Fraser, for the presentation. And yes, finally, an opportunity to ask you some questions. Just wanted to follow up around the point made around a trustee, and wondered if you could give us some insight in terms of practice in other communities in Aotearoa and whether that is common practice for cities to provide that.
I am aware of a number of other stations that have council oars or council staff as part of their trust makeup. I believe Free FM in Hamilton is one such example. Each station is able to obviously, or each governance body is able to create their trust deed as they see fit. And from the very start of NPR, it was identified that certain communities were important to the makeup through dissecting Section 36C of the Broadcasting Act and trying to bring those communities on board. So we have in our trust deed a list of organisations that are allowed to appoint a trustee at their leisure. So the City Council, the District Council, Ncea, Rangi o Manawatu, who else? The Palmerston North Youth Council, and I know we're working towards hopefully seeing an appointment in that area, and the Community Services Council as well. So there are a number of named bodies that can appoint, and it speaks to, I think, an element of accountability. We don't necessarily expect all trustees to be active all the time, but it's a conduit to the wider community to have access to the top, should the manager do something that he is not meant to be doing.
Thank you. And just to clarify, so historically, has Palmerston North City Council ever taken up that opportunity?
Yes, up until the resignation of a trustee last year, there was a representative. I have spoken to the mayor since then. He is willing to appoint a trustee. I just don't think he could think of anyone that would A, have the time, or B, have the necessary skills or interest. But that's a discussion for another time if it's wished to be actioned.
Thank you for those clarifications, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Councillor Butt.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Fraser. It's not a real question. It's a funny comment on your presentation, Fraser. The second slide, which says something about the Broadcasting Act, and it says that it is taking into account of interests of women and children and everything. Is there a mention of any man or common people in that?
No, and that's why I don't like the way it's written now, particularly when it comes to women, and careful because I am a man here. But when this was written, it was a way of addressing an imbalance in the binary view of gender, I believe. And I think society now is in a position where that binary view is not regarded as the whole picture. So I have interpreted that as a white man that it should be for those marginalised on the basis of gender or sexuality. I am open to further debate and discussion on that, but I figured that's kind of the idea behind it.
Thank you.
But just to add to that, point 5, minorities in the community, including ethnic minorities. There's another imbalance there. But when you talk about minorities in the community, well, if you think long and hard enough, most people can call themselves a minority in one way, shape or form, whether it's an interest they have or their identity. So it's pretty easy to take anyone and call them a minority.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. I think that's interesting. Fraser, are there any plans, do you know, to amend that piece of legislation? To update it?
I have spoken to people in Parliament who shall remain nameless that says, fiddle with legislation at your peril. But there are some large things happening in the public broadcasting space, as I'm sure you're aware, and Section 36C is a tool for allocating funding. So who knows what's going to happen down the line.
Thank you.
Yeah,
just that mention of funding brings me to my final question. I think you said that your funding was from New Zealand On Air. You referenced some trust funding that you'd also received. Is that where you get your funding from, is just New Zealand On Air?
New Zealand On Air is the bulk of it. To be clear, if New Zealand On Air decided that they were going to stop funding Access Media, the doors to Access to Manawatu People's Radio would be closed the following day. But we do get lotteries, COGS, the City Council small grant through CSC, Lion Foundation, Eastern Central, Pub Charity, and a couple of other bequests and trusts as well. But they make up a fairly small proportion in contrast to the New Zealand On Air funding.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Fraser, for that interesting presentation. You mentioned about archiving some of the material to the Ngātaonga Sound and Vision Archive, which I assume is the National Archive. What about locally? Do you maintain an archive yourself, or how do we ensure that some of the programs, say from 20 years ago or whatever, that might have a sort of social historical importance are available to people in the community or researchers or whatever now?
So we have a robust archiving system in place now using the cloud and Amazon Glacier to back up everything that is recorded at MPR. This was not always the case. We had backup stored on site, and we have to sadly reference the backup crash of 2012, I think it was, where we did lose stuff. But now that we're in the cloud, we are confident that we are back. We have copies of everything, and as time goes on, that just grows and grows and grows. In terms of making it accessible to the wider public, through our podcast offerings, the last 6 months of every current program is made available for people to listen to at their leisure. Beyond that, and again referencing Cat Pause is a good example, we are looking at a way to host all of our content online for people that want to access it. That basically comes down to hosting costs and having the sheer space in order to host all that stuff. We don't have the capacity to do that. It is my intention to look to Ngātaonga Sound and Vision for some other opportunities, but they won't keep everything. They do have a curation process that they go through. Is there scope for Te Manawa? Is there scope for the City Council to do something in that space? Who knows? It is not something I have entertained or given too much brain power to at the moment, but I'm always open to suggestions on how a wider catalogue of our content can be made available.
Thank you. Yes, some interesting thoughts there. Thanks, Fraser.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. And thank you, Fraser. That brings us to the end of the questions from elected members. As I said to Mike earlier, you're very welcome to stay online with us for the rest of the meeting, but your active participation element has now come to a close. Thank you for making the time to join us today. Elected members, the recommendation is that the Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee receive the presentation for information, which I will move. And I'll seek a seconder from the Councillor Barrett. Thank you. I see you in the top of my screen. And if we go back to the full screen, I'll open that for any comments that people have. I will just note, first I will note Fraser's Mahita Dr. Kat Pause. Her sudden death was a shock to our community. I think provided an opportunity to reflect on the exceptional work that she led and the role that the active role she played in our community, not just through Manawatu People's Radio, but in many elements. You will have come across Kat, and I know we were all surprised and saddened by her sudden death. So thank you to Fraser for bringing that up as part of his presentation today. I'll also note that I'll follow up with the Mayor's office around the process for putting in place a trustee. My understanding is that it doesn't have to be an elected member, and it hasn't been in the past. So I'll follow up with the Mayor's office to see what the Mayor's intention is around that, and we'll communicate that back to elected members. Any other comments before we move to receive the presentation? Being none, I will ask you to vote to receive that by a show of hands. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? An abstention from Councillor Dingwall, and that is carried apart from that one. Thank you. So, moving to our next item on the agenda, which is minutes. We have two lots of minutes that we are going to receive today to confirm. Item number 8, confirmation that the minutes of the Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee meeting of 17 November 2021, Part 1 Public, be confirmed as a true, 13th of April 2021, be confirmed as a true and correct record, which I am happy to move. We'll seek a seconder, Councillor Barrett. Thank you. And then, we're taking those together. Sorry, I hadn't seen that. Second, the minutes of the meeting of 17th of November 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record. Councillor Barrett, are you happy to second both of those? Yes, good. Just to explain that there had been a question raised about a matter of accuracy in the 17th of November minutes, which meant we had to take it away to check. That has been resolved, and so we're bringing both of those sets of minutes to be confirmed through this meeting. Councillor Harper, you have your hand up.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Chair. Can I have them separately, because I'm an apology for the 17th of November, so I just can't vote on those ones. Thank you.
Absolutely, I'm sure we can separate those. That will just take governance a moment. No other questions while we're waiting for that? So I'll just wait for that first recommendation to come up on the screen. Check we've got those separated. Thank you, Natalia. So that's the first one is up for the 13th of April. If we flick that down, then I can see everybody's faces, and I will invite you all to vote. Those in favour of confirming those minutes. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And then we'll move to the second recommendation, which is for the 17th of November minutes. Again, back to the faces screen. All those in favour? Against? Abstaining?
Abstain, thanks.
Councillor Harper abstaining. Everybody else in favour? Carried. Thank you, Natalia. Thank you. Now we move to item 9 of our agenda, and so we start to hear from cultural organisations as they present their 6-month report and draft statement of intents. And our first CCO up today is the Regent Theatre Trust, and I believe we're joined by David Walsh and David Lee from the Regent, so the General Manager and the Chair. Gentlemen, I hear a buzzing, so I think that's you.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, okay. Thank you, Councillor Ryan. For those of you that don't know me, I'm David Lee, I'm the Chair, and I'm going to pass over to our Manager. Good afternoon.
You're very echoey there, David, so you might just need to get closer to your microphone or something.
Okay, does that sound any better?
A little bit, yes. Thank you.
That's better. Okay. Right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and councillors. We're pleased to bring you the 6-month report on the Regent, or are we? The nation's events over the period has meant that we started the year with great enthusiasm. However, it was short-lived. After a busy July with over 7,000 admissions, it all came to a halt once more during August, when we went back into lockdown and our events and attendances were again severely impacted. We struggled from that point, with 35 events representing 86 days of hire either being cancelled or postponed during that period, and that was up until December. Currently, up until March, this now sits at 64 events, representing 178 days lost. And that's for the bookings that we currently held. Goodness knows the number of events that COVID stopped people from booking us. So the 6-month report is not a pretty read. When we're predicting at this early stage that most of our key performance measures will not be achieved for the entire year. We're like all businesses and have found it difficult to forecast end-of-year results, as virtually daily we are coping with changes as events continue to be cancelled or postponed, as we struggle to attract future events during these uncertain times. For example, we had one international touring show that was first booked to perform here in 2020 and has now been postponed again for the 5th time due to COVID. The events industry throughout the country, which includes performing arts centres, has been hard hit, especially during this latest COVID outbreak. Financially, we're not in dire straits, show business talk there, but we are in a serious dilemma with our reserves, having to top up our deficit. Our results show a trading deficit of $35,000 during the 6-month period. Fortunately, we have been reliant on the government's wage subsidy and resurgent payments. Without this assistance, we would have been further in deficit by an additional $82,000. Who knew when we were preparing the 6-month report that 4 months later, we would still be continuing to suffer the COVID impact with no events taking place at the theatre since January. We ask ourselves each month when doing our planning and forecasting, what will next month bring? What will May bring? You know, we were hopeful that we'd be back to some sort of normality, but unfortunately, just in the past week, we've had confirmed the cancellation of 2 major events, the Massey graduation ceremonies and the Royal New Zealand ballet production of Swan Lake. Planning ahead, we're all ready and waiting to go, and I feel confident that our audience will return once we get the green light, or should I say orange light. And the good news is 45 minutes ago, we got that orange light at 11:59 tonight. The doors will open, obviously. However, the people won't come back immediately. It's going to take work. But we're on our way, we're beginning to be on the road to recovery. Our forward bookings from July onwards are encouraging, and we continue to talk to local organisers, together with promoters from throughout New Zealand, Sydney, Melbourne, and even Canada. We are encouraging them to make room within our booking schedule to give them every opportunity to book our magnificent venue. So these 6 months have been difficult, and the balance of this financial year shows no improvement. But we will get through this and look forward with confidence to a COVID-free, interrupted following financial year. We have prepared our statement of intent with this in mind. So are we pleased to bring you the 6-month report? Yes, of course we are. And we now can see a light at the end of this very long tunnel. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And who knew that council committees is where you come to get your news? Because I hadn't seen the news that we were moving traffic lights. So, yep, this will be the media of choice for people's up-to-date news, I'm sure. David, I did have a question. Just the recommendations to council. I don't know if you see those in front of you, but the council agrees that the recommended comments on the draft statement of intent be advised to the Regent Theatre Trust. And I wanted to check in with you regarding that table, which is in page 31 of our order paper, to see if you had any particular concerns about the commentary from officers around the statement of expectation, or if you were happy to accept the comments coming back to you.
We are happy to accept the comments coming back to us. I've been in discussion with Gillian and we've been talking through these. So yeah, we're both on the same page, which is great.
That's very encouraging to hear. Councillor Harper has a question.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, David, for being so open and honest and upfront with us. It is a very tough time. My question is around your staffing. Have you managed to retain your staff during this period, or have you found that staff have left your employment while we've been going through this tough time?
We have lost 1.5 staff. We one full-timer and one part-timer. And at this stage, we haven't replaced them because we've had no business. Once business starts coming through the doors again, yes, we will be replacing those roles, or we'll be looking at the roles to see can we do it differently and more efficiently. So yeah, so we lost 1.5 staff.
Thank you, David. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, David, and thank you, David. Just a question around the statement of intent and looking ahead. There's an indication there around in the coming year that an environmental sustainability measure or objective will be set. I'm just wondering if you could give us an insight in terms of what information or what advice you might be able to draw on in terms of setting those goals.
We've started that process already, and we're working with, my firm's name's just gone off my top of my head, but they presented one for Te Manawa to council. So we're working with them at the moment, and we've got the information just ready to send out to staff to get their input with regard to how they travel to work, etc. We're looking at the waste, how much waste we use. So the work has started now, so I'll be in a position to report on that later in the year.
Fantastic. Thank you, David. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I think that is all the questions, David and David. Thank you for coming to present to us. We do appreciate the opportunity to not just to have a look at your statement, draft statement of intent and your reporting, but just the opportunity to have this conversation, which I know we do a lot informally, but good to do that formally as well. So I will look.
Rachel, if I could, oh no, you do, sorry, we're back.
No.
Yes, Rachel.
David,
I just want to thank council for bearing with us. We've been through a very rough time. COVID is only one thing. We've had the ticket rocket debacle. We've also had a manager up and leave us in a very difficult time, and another manager that had personal issues. So we want to thank you, Rachel, and the Mayor in particular, for your support. And we're now looking forward that the light at the end of the tunnel is starting to get a bit of a glow to it, and we can see we're going to have a tough 6 months. We know that. We just can't open the doors tomorrow and start tomorrow, but within 6 months, hopefully we'll be back smiling. Thank you.
Thank you, David, and thank you for the work that you do. I will open for comments once we've moved that recommendation. There are 3 recommendations in front of us. The committee recommends that Council receive the 6-month performance report 1 July to 31 December 2021, attachment 1, submitted by the Regent Theatre Trust. 2, that Council receive the draft statement of intent 2022-25, attachments 3 and 4, submitted by the Regent Theatre Trust. And 3, that Council agree that the recommended comments on the draft statement of intent 2022-25 outlined in table 3 be advised to the Regent Theatre Trust Board. I will move those and seek a seconder. Councillor Barrett, thank you. If we go back to full screen, I'll invite any comments from elected members on the Regent Theatre's statement of intent or 6-month report. I will start by thanking the Chair and the General Manager for speaking with us today and sharing how this is going for them. I think our expectations are realistic. We've all lived through the impact of COVID on the various parts of the community that we connect with, and the performing arts sector and the hospitality sectors have borne the brunt of this. There is absolutely no question in my mind that that is where the greatest impact has been felt in terms of our business community. And I lump those together deliberately in terms of our business community because that is a symbiotic relationship, and particularly the relationship of the Regent on Broadway and our city centre hospitality offering. When the Regent isn't open, then our theatres and our bars, and to a lesser extent our retail, feel it. And so I'm very much looking forward to seeing the Regent open its doors again to some larger crowds, and I'm sure our Chair of Economic Development, Councillor Harpeter, will be joining me in hoping that. So our expectations are realistic based on what we know of the impact of COVID, that it's been impossible for the Regent to be open in any meaningful way with numbers of less than 200, and I'm absolutely delighted to hear in the news offering of committee that that restriction is being lifted. So we thank you for the work that you've done, and I know the Mayor would join me in thanking you if he was here, but he's not. So thank you to you and to the Board of the Regent for the work that you've done, and we look forward to seeing what the next 6 months holds for you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and certainly building on your comments, and to join in the expression of appreciation to the team at the Regent for all that they have done to journey through some challenging times. Just wanted to briefly comment in addition around what I found quite heartening, not only that there was news of progress towards environmental sustainability measures, but I think the thing that I find most heartening in that is hearing the aspects of process there, that we are seeing that some of these perhaps stretch areas are actually being addressed through collaboration between CCOs, and also that the process is including input from the full team at the Regent. These sort of changes in culture, changes in direction in terms of an organization need that input and buy-in from all those involved. And to hear that that's happening internally and that there is collaboration across CCOs in these sort of areas is very heartening indeed. So I would express my gratitude in particular for that. And yes, wish the Regent every success in the journey ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. On that, we will look to vote to receive those, to make those recommendations to Council. So all those in favour, taking all 3 together. Any against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. By my reckoning, that moves us to item 10, Te Manawa Museums Trust. And we are joined online, I think, by a collaboration, a room full of people there. I think we have, well, I definitely see John Folk there, and he has people with him. So, John, if I could hand over to you first to introduce who the shadowy figures behind you are, and then and then to present your 6-month report and draft statement of intent. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Are you able to hear us okay, or hear me okay? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm sitting here wearing two faces. Oh no, two heads perhaps, as chair and also as the role I'm currently fulfilling, which is interim CEO. I'm backed up by the shadowy figures of Catherine Parsons, Ncea, and Janet Ellery. Yes, so thank you for filling in the words, Janet. So, Madam Chair, if you don't mind, I'd firstly like to update you on where we are with the search for a new CEO. So at present, we entered into an advertising campaign, if you like. We received 17 high quality applicants, and we reduced that number down to 4. 4 women, in fact, who we interviewed last week, and down at Cassia Birch, using the usual sort of selection of rooms there. We have chosen our prospective appointee. She has a contract in front of her, and I expect to be able to execute that with her tomorrow. My proposal then is that immediately after the Easter weekend, we will advise our team here at Te Manawa, the council, and also our societies and other partners, and then perhaps enter into a wider advertising of the appointee. At present, we're moving towards the person commencing duties here in July, because she has some commitments that she wishes to fulfill, and I'm not the sort of person that would try and persuade somebody to do that, because you don't want that yourself. So that means that until July, we'll sort of be carrying on with me fulfilling 2 roles, and the team here actually are responding extremely well in terms of their efforts. On that front, I've able to advise you that we have now had a program, we'll have a program in place to reopen Te Manawa fully from this Saturday, which then puts us firmly online for the school holidays. A couple of points that I'd just like to make. One is that the team here have responded extremely well in terms of getting things up and running again. You may have seen in the local papers that our advertising headline now is open, and we're open for all activities, including a very good school holiday program, which you'll see coming up soon. It actually includes some visits from alpacas, which will be rather interesting. Anyway, we'll leave that for your entertainment later. So we're getting ready. Our team are all very active in terms of preparing for the reopening, and also our learning team, in fact, have been active, sending out packs for online learning to schools throughout the country. Most notably, I'm pleased to see that we're sending rather a lot of information into Auckland schools, so we're doing quite well on the export front. Putting that aside, obviously the things that we've been working on include our participation from Janet and also from Jeff Fox towards the development of this cultural precinct project with the council. Norman is here now. She's the work that we've done with Rongomo Productions in terms of embedding some of their work within Te Manawa, and the planning that's now going ahead with them is probably a first for a museum and gallery operation within New Zealand in terms of the close cooperation with Rangitani, identifying with our region. The other thing I think that is notable is that we've been working closely with our societies in terms of moving forward. I had a meeting last week with the president of the Art Society. We're about to sign a fresh MOU with them, and we're moving forward on a number of projects on that front. In terms of the actual report, I'll leave that as read. I don't propose to repeat anything from it, but we're here to answer any questions that you'd like to ask.
Thank you, John. Thank you for taking this opportunity to update us on your CE search, and that is excellent news. I look forward to getting more detail on that as it becomes appropriate to share it. I did have a question. It's along the same lines as I'll probably be asking all of our CCOs, but the officer report does a comparison of the SOI with Council's statement of expectation and makes some comments that they would like to put back to you. So first I want to check that how you felt about those, if you're okay with them, and particularly with the comment about strengthening the partnership with the New Zealand Rugby Museum to find out what, if anything, has been happening there, because that is one of the comments officers have raised.
Sure, yes, I understand the comment. Two things there, actually. One is that we're about to execute a fresh sublease arrangement with the Rugby Museum, so obviously the relationship continues. We've also worked closely with the Rugby Museum in terms of our plans for reopening, and we're sort of moving forward with that.
Excellent, thank you. And any other comments in regard to the other recommendations from officers for the final statement?
No, look, I think that the recommendations are all noted. They're all things that we're trying to move ahead with, including obviously establishing a baseline for carbon emissions and seeing just what we can do on that front. Obviously, some of that is limited by our buildings and by the configuration of them, but that's something that we do see as being important for the next period. And apart from that, yes, they're all good recommendations that we've discussed and agreed with.
Thank you. Question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks, John and team. Just had a question around, in our officer report under financial commentary, that it's been noted that one of the sizable revenue streams is fundraising and sponsorship, which has been budgeted at a much higher level, presumably in order to make the financial performance break even. So I wondered if you could comment on if you feel that that is achievable, that higher level of fundraising and sponsorship, and how you might be going about increasing that.
Yeah, it's certainly a challenge. What we have done, though, is we've appointed a new person on a 3-day-a-week basis to commence with fundraising. I think two important things there that have happened. One is, of course, it's been very difficult to even get to people during this lockdown. So the freeing up into an orange regime will be much easier for that. Actually, that person also is responsible for the alpacas, because what she in fact did was go out, get out there, find out that they were available, get the funds to bring them down here, and then help our team mount the event. So she hasn't been wasting her time. We've also produced a package to go out to people when we're looking for sponsorship. Now, obviously, and I know from my commercial sort of side, if you like, it's scattering bread upon the waters that won't necessarily result in much take-up yet. But once you start to get these things out there, the idea is to get them out there, get Te Manawa known in people's minds, and also see that when people do sponsor or join with us, they will get some quid pro quo, as we have done in the past, where our major sponsors have been able to hold events here and special openings and things like that. So yes, there is some work going on there. Sponsorship is very difficult, as I well know, and we've just got to keep sort of knocking on doors and making sure that we're in the forefront of people's minds as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, John and team. A couple questions around the statement of intent. The first is looking at the financials. You indicate a 2% year-on-year, effectively, inflation adjustment of the council funds available to Te Manawa. Now, I assume the 2% is something we've probably told you through the long-term plan, but I'd just appreciate a comment around, given the inflationary pressures in the economy, to what extent a 2% annual adjustment over the next 3 years is appropriate, given that council funding is the vast majority of your revenue, and whether in fact 2% might leave you in effect going backwards in terms of real resourcing.
I'll let Catherine answer that one, please.
It does concern me because we've had indicated budget since this was prepared, because this has to be with council by the end of February. We have had indications from quite a few suppliers that there'll be cost increases greater than that. I was talking to our insurers this morning and they told us to expect between 5 and 8%. And 2% will make that bottom line that I predicted difficult to attain.
Thank you. Can I ask how you might be bringing some of these concerns to council in a formal way to get them potentially addressed, or at least heard?
Well, between now and the end of June, we finalised a statement of intent, and although we don't like changing the financial figures, I would probably have to work into that the known factors, because that's what finance people have to do, and it would probably reduce that slim margin that we've managed to come up with. It is quite difficult forecasting out so far forward, especially in this inflationary environment.
Thank you, Catherine. Appreciate that. Madam Chair, just one further question, which relates to the substance of the draft statement of intent. There's a table on page 10 of the statement of intent, which is 131 of our agenda, which sets out a number of activities within 3 different strategic goals. The question I have is that in some cases those activities drop away, and it's a little bit hard to work out if there is intent to pick them back up at some time in the future, or if that's more a product of how far in the future you're able to plan, etc. Could you just talk us through a bit the connectivity and ongoing intent in some of those areas in general, where there is drop-off in activity within the 3 years?
I think a lot of the timing of things within that is going to be related to how quickly we can pick activity up again this year. We're planning for major exhibitions out during the period of the statement of intent. But one of the things that we're trying to do as well is fill in or backfill, if you like, with events and learning opportunities. So our team are working pretty hard on trying to actually fill those in and almost review the activities in terms of the opportunities that we're going to be presented with. It's been quite hard to do that in this last period with everything closed down so firmly. So I guess there's not much of an answer for you, I know, but the idea there is that we're trying to be realistic in terms of what we can achieve, but also keep looking for fresh opportunities to fill those activities in.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. And in pointing me back to that page, you reminded me of a question I meant to ask. In the Strategic Goal 2, Item 9, this might just be a question of phrasing, but I was interested that it says reopen discussions about the art gallery being brought up to standard. Reopen concerns me because I wasn't aware those discussions were closed. Would you care to comment?
Yeah, interesting point, Madam Chair. Yes, I would say continue, because we've had continuous discussions on them. Just on that though, one of the things that our exhibition team are actually signalling out a little way is that at some point if we're going to really revitalise the art gallery in terms of being ready for international exhibitions, there will be some point of rolling or complete closure. And I think we will really need to signal that early and plan it quite carefully in conjunction with the various interest groups that are engaged in the arts sector. We don't want a repeat of the sort of situation we've had previously.
No, we absolutely don't. Thank you, John. And I will note that myself, I suppose, for the report that our facilities manager brings to this committee on ongoing works in our cultural buildings.
Thank you very much.
There are no further questions. So thank you for bringing your team to speak with us today.
Thank you.
I will move back to the recommendation screen, please, Natalia. So the committee recommends that Council receive the 6-month performance report 1 July to 31 December 2021, attachment 1, submitted by Te Manawa Museums Trust, that Council receive the draft statement of intent 2022 to 25, attachment 3, submitted by Te Manawa Museums Trust, and that Council agree that the recommended comments on the draft statement of intent 2021-24 outlined in table 3 be advised to Te Manawa Museum Trust. I will move that, seconded by Councillor Barrett. Thank you. We'll open for any comments if we move to the full screen. I will, as usual, take this opportunity to express our thanks to the board of the Trust, to the staff who have soldiered on in trying circumstances with the various impacts of COVID, to the societies that support Te Manawa and to their partners in the wider community for the work that you do in providing a home for our stories to be told. It's very much appreciated. And I particularly have been delighted to see the Tamariki section reopen just recently. It's great news to see Te Manawa moving into an open space as the restrictions move on. And I think as our community is ready to come back out. But thank you for the work that you've done throughout the last 6 months to provide a safe space for our community to engage as much as they felt comfortable to do that. It is very much appreciated, and I'll be grateful if you pass that on to the staff and those frontline staff particularly. Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and firstly echoing those comments. 2 additional comments. One for colleagues. I personally find an increasing level of unrealism and imagination required to think that a 2% year-on-year increment is in any way adequate if we simply want to stand still, even regardless of advancing, and would hope that we bear that in mind as we consider what investments the city does make in the future. I would hate to see us get into a situation where we allowed inflationary pressures to begin to cut back and reduce what in fact is a very valued service and institution in our community, in the heart of our community. The second comment is really for John and the team at Te Manawa, and really do appreciate the work that's gone into developing the statement of intent and a lot of good content there. Just wanted to reflect that for myself, I did struggle a little bit with some of the presentation on page, I believe it, yes, is page 10, where that table does lay out the different initiatives in terms of understanding I guess to some extent the continuity and connectivity. There may or may not be a better way to relay that to us and to the wider community, but just wanted to reflect that was something that I did find a little bit challenging in terms of especially some of those activities that would pop in and out for just a year or that would drop off early. So just a request to reflect on ways that might be communicated in a way that can give us a little more insight there. But overall, really heartened by how well Te Manawa's team has come through the COVID times to date, and very excited about the opening, very excited about early insights that you've been able to give us today in terms of where leadership is going, and looking forward to the next chapter. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. There are no further comments, so we will move. I'll seek a vote on that. Elected members, can I just ask you to make sure you have your cameras on, or I can't see your hands? We're on the full screen, so I've read out the recommendations already, so I will move to a vote on that. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. Any against? I didn't see any. Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Colleagues, it's my intention to take the next item, which is the Globe Theatre, and then to break for afternoon tea. Just so that people are aware that's where we're heading. Which takes us to item 11, 6-month report and draft statement of intent for the Globe Theatre. And I think we are joined by manager Jerry Keating. Yes, I see you, Jerry.
Yes. Hello.
And did you also have with you Gerard Searle? I think I saw Gerard come in before.
Yes, I'm here.
You're there. Excellent. Thank you both for
Thank
joining. I will hand over to you to present your 6-month report and your draft statement of intent.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Madam Chair and fellow councillors. Obviously, you know, it is my pleasure to present our 6-month report and our statement of intent for the next 3 years to the Arts and Cultural Heritage Committee. With regards to our 6-month report, basically what was looking to be an exciting and busy July and December was in fact exciting and busy, but not exactly for the reasons we expected. July is always a fun month with the Manawatu Youth Theatre on stage, so it's always a great start to our financial year. July with the mitten in the house. August and September gave us many headaches as we went into various stages of lockdown from August the 18th until September the 21st. This brought about many postponement and cancellations. Thankfully, some normality came back in November, while December, which is usually a quiet month, gave us the opportunity to reschedule shows that had been postponed back in August and September. So December actually turned out to be quite a busy month for us, which was great. As with our previous reports over the past 2 years, we continue to work with all our hirers through these very uncertain times. It is very hard at the moment for the arts community to I guess, look forward and to look forward with enthusiasm. It's not just a matter of putting a show on stage. It's all the hard work that goes into the 6 months beforehand with the rehearsals and getting everything organized and the set building, etc. And with COVID at the moment, you know, it's just really hard for these guys to do it. Our aim will always be to enable them to perform or present a show or an event at the Globe in a safe and a comfortable environment. I wanted to just quickly touch base in our 6-month report. I mentioned that we had a bit of a downturn in our usage stats and our performances. So our planned usage for July to December, we were looking at having 391 usages, and that ended up being 263. So there was a 32% decrease, and our performances went from 171 down to 112, which was a 35% decrease. And of course, that was due to the lockdowns that took place in August and September. However, I am kind of enlightened by the fact that if COVID hadn't have hit us in August and September, the usage of 391 would have been our largest usage for July to December for the past 5 years. And our performances of 171 would have also been our largest performance for the last 5 years. So while there was that decrease in events and activities happening at the Globe, at least we started the year looking very, very positive. And, you know, that is, as has been mentioned before, that is how we roll at the Globe. We do like to be as positive as we can. In our 6-month report, what I thought was quite nice too, is that we had a very nice mixture of events. Between theatre and music and dance and film. There was a nice cross section across the board, sitting up, you know, that 14, 15, 20% of events. So it wasn't as if we just had one major type of event happening at the Globe Theatre. It was actually quite nice to see it evened out across the year. And also very nice to see that our community use of the theatre is currently sitting at 77%, which, you know, while we love having all the big guys come to the Globe from overseas and national tours, it is even more nicer, if that's a term I can use, to have our local community events happening, and that includes all our MOU people that are there. It's just great, and I will give a huge shout out to the Comedy Hub. I may have mentioned this before, but these guys are just continually putting on their fresh and funny fortnightly shows, their monthly shows, their workshops. It's just fantastic to see that these guys are out there doing what they do. We also were nominated for the Small Venue of the Year award at the Vans 2020 Awards. Unfortunately, we lost out to Toy Toy in Hawke's Bay, but I promise you we will be back this year, and we are ready to bring that title back to the Manawatu. With regards our statement of intent, we have kept a conservative view for the following 3 years. We felt that considering the uncertainty in the arts community at the moment, that was the correct thing to do. As David mentioned earlier on, it was wonderful to hear today that we are going back to the orange setting. We know from experience over the last 2 years, but definitely over the last 6 months, that while there is a group of people who are happy to go out to shows and events, and they're ready to do that now, and they're going, there is also a large part of our community that are still just not 100% sure. It's wonderful to see, and I'll use the upcoming So You Think You Can Drag Palmy show. When I spoke with Ricky from Centrepoint, we had a chat about it, and he says, look, we're probably only going to get 30 or 40 people coming to this show, so let's stick it in Globe 2. And for those of you who follow us on Facebook, you'll know that we've had to move it into Globe 1, currently sitting on 130 tickets sold, so that's just fantastic. But we've had other shows that we would normally have in Globe 1 because we'd expect a big crowd, and we've moved them into Globe 2. I've mentioned this before, we are very fortunate with the size of our theatre that even during the red settings, we were still able to put shows on stage. My heart goes out to the guys at the Regent Theatre. It's such great news. Hopefully they'll be able to open their doors now and get people in. But at least we can have 30 or 40 people coming in, and at least we're putting something on the stage, and there's something for people to do, there's something for people to go to, and hopefully now that we're in the orange setting, things will be looking great. With our statement of intent, a huge shout out to Gillian and Sarah, who worked with me on a number of times regarding our performance measures. We have made a bit of a change to some of them and brought in some new ones, and it was great to get their feedback and their input, and that will continue obviously as we go forward. And once again, we will continue to be proactive and enthusiastic towards our events and working with prospective hirers and users to get their shows and events on stage. The rest of the year is looking good. When we went to, was it 2 weeks ago, when the government announced that we could now have 200 people in our inside venues, we started to get a lot of inquiries. So fingers crossed, the people are ready to come out. I've noticed a lot of the bands and performers that I support are starting to do fundraisers and pledge me campaigns because they've got music ready to go. So they've been sitting for the past 2 years, probably writing a huge number of songs, and now they're ready to come on tour, and hopefully we'll have them here at the Globe Theatre. And that's it.
Thank you, Jerry. As always, thank you for your hugely enthusiastic presentation of the elements that you look after for the Globe. I had a couple of questions. So I'll kick off and see if any colleagues also had some. First, in your highlights, or in the officers' report, they talk about the highlights from the Globe 6-month report, of which there were many. But one that stood out to me was you hosted Levin's Little Theatre for an encore performance of Calendar Girls. Yes. And I wondered if there was scope for that regional collaboration to continue.
Yeah, I mean, having Calendar Girls, obviously, with Matt, our assistant manager, being a member of the Levin Little Theatre, that's how we got that introduction. Now, Matt has just finished directing his first show at Levin. He did the 39 Steps. And yeah, fingers crossed, we may be able to get that up to the Globe at some stage. I was up in New Plymouth recently, and I called into the Fort Wall Theatre, which is a very similar theatre size to the Globe, I think about 130. They use tables and chairs rather than a tiered seating. And I had some conversations with them about working together, that when they have shows that are coming through, you know, they'll mention the Globe Theatre. And likewise, when we have shows coming through, we'll mention, you know, going up to New Plymouth. Yes, so we're always looking to collaborate with people. I'm still doing my usual Facebook stalking and chasing the shows and the performers that I like and trying to chat to them and bring them to Palmerston North. You know,
excellent.
and,
Well, that probably
yes.
leads nicely into my next question, which was one of the elements that we put into the statement of expectation was about identifying your regional and nationally significant events based on current delivery and exploring a stretch target. Now, I'm not in the space of exploring stretch targets in the current environment, but yeah, my read on your input into the sector is that you have a feeling for how regionally and nationally significant events are going to pick back up again, but that's not currently in your draft statement of intent. So I wondered what your thinking was for not picking that up.
Yeah, well, at the time we were kind of, and I think David or maybe John has mentioned it, you know, the outlook wasn't looking great for the next while. So our statement of intent is conservative. Now that obviously we're now going back to orange, and I am feeling that I'd like to think I'm getting that vibe that people are ready to get back on the road and tour. I think it'll take a couple of months until we start seeing that coming through. That being said, we have been able to reschedule the Greg Johnson concert. And I'm currently talking to the agents for Don McGlashan to try and get him back to the theatre again. He would have played last week. So it will be now we will sit back down with council officers and discuss this issue again and look at how we can implement it into our statement of intent. This is just a draft statement of intent, so we do have another couple of months to make a few changes, and we will be talking with the officers about that.
Thank you, because I'm noting that the office is suggesting the objective be put on hold, but I actually disagree. And I think with the way things are moving, you probably do too. So I'll leave that one with you.
Yes, certainly. Thank you.
Councillor Butt has a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Gary, for your presentation. I wanted to ask about that award going to Toi Toi. I know Toi Toi is a new venue. Was that award based on the venue itself or the number of events hosted?
They don't really tell us. It was we were shortlisted with Toi Toi, and I can't think of the name. It's the small theatre at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch. They didn't give me any feedback. The only feedback I got back was that the judges loved what I put up as my presentation. They were really enthusiastic about the Globe, etc. But they didn't exactly say why Toi Toi got the award. Unfortunately, it wasn't one of those awards where we were able to attend in person. Normally, these awards are usually held in Wellington and everybody can come down and attend. They were held online. And it actually coincided with a busy night at the Globe Theatre. So I think we had two shows going on at the same time, as well as trying to watch it in my office. So it was kind of, in a way, it's probably good that we didn't get the award, because I might have actually missed it. But no, we just didn't get that feedback. But what we have been doing is we've worked with a local cameraman, videographer to actually create a nice, I guess, promotion for the Globe Theatre, so that, you know, when we put ourselves forward for more awards like this, we can actually send through some nice glossy material, which obviously always looks good.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair.
Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Jerry. Good to see you. Just wanted to pick up a question that came through one of our sector engagement meetings around annual budget. Somebody raised in those meetings the topic of venue acoustics, and just wanted to get an overall comment from you around venue acoustics there, and whether there's any feedback that you get from the public or people on stage, and anything that you would want council to keep in mind in that space.
I'd have to say at this stage, Councillor Barrett, that we haven't had any negative feedback from anybody who performs. A lot of the people who perform in Globe 2 love Globe 2 because Globe 2 was built with that whole black box acoustic set in mind. I guess Roger Fox is always one of the people that I look to because when he puts 42 people on Globe 1 stage and I can hear him out in the car park and then I say to him, hey, was that all good? He's always happy. So no, I can't say that anybody has come to us and said, look, the sound is really bad. I do remember Lloyd Cole many years ago commenting to me that on stage he felt that we could have done with a little bit more equipment, which we remedied the following year when we got, we bought a whole load of new equipment. So at the moment, nobody has come to us and said, hey, this doesn't sound good. To be honest, I always feel sorry for the people that sit in seats A1 to A3 in Globe 1 because they're right bang in front of that speaker. But once again, no one has really ever come to us and said, look, I didn't enjoy the show because it was too loud or etc. And of course, we do have a nice range between your Roger Foxes and your theatre shows. We also have Chamber Music New Zealand who perform, and they do all their shows, acoustically. And they've never come to us and said, the sound wasn't great, we didn't enjoy it, we didn't get a good vibe. And probably just more importantly, no one in the audience has come and said, I couldn't hear the violin, I couldn't hear the piano. So, so at this stage, I don't have anything really more to say.
Thanks, Jerry. That's really helpful to hear. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, councillors. That seems to have exhausted the question, so that's you off the hot seat, Jerry. And Gerard, thank you for being with us today. We will move to the screen with the recommendations on it, so I can read those out. That the committee recommends that council receive the 6-month performance report 1 July to 31 December 2021, submitted by the Globe Theatre Trust. That council receive the draft statement of intent 2022 to 25, submitted by the Globe Theatre Trust. That council agree that the recommended comments on the draft statement of intent 2021-24 outlined in table 3 be advised to the Globe Theatre Trust Board. I will move those. Seeking a seconder from those on screen. Councillor Johnson, thank you. And open for any comments. So, as is traditional, I extend. It feels less and less heartfelt as we go through, and it absolutely isn't. It's totally heartfelt as I extend our thanks to the board and the staff at the Globe Theatre and to your ever-increasing number of volunteers who I notice when I attend events, whether they're on the door or behind the bar. Thank you for the work that you do supporting community performing arts for our city. I was sad that you missed out on Small Venue of the Year. I thought that was a very worthy nomination, but I will award you instead a gold medal for rearranging events, which you have proved yourselves to be legendary at. And I have a lot of confidence that if people are willing to travel, that the Globe will be a place that they travel to, that they tour their shows to because of the service that you have provided. So my very great thanks to you, Jerry, and your team for that. The flexibility of the venue has stood you in good stead and continues to, noting your comments on So You Think You Can Drag, which for elected members, that show has been running successfully for the last year or so in the dark room. So what we're seeing there is an ability to grow our own performing arts offering from a 50-seat venue to the proposal to take it into Globe 2, which seats about 100, Globe 1, which seats about 100, and then to Globe 2, which seats about 200. I'd like to think that the attractiveness of that offering is maybe to do with the quality of the judges for that, but possibly not to do with that, possibly to do with the flexibility of our venue spaces. So thank you, Jerry and the team, the board, and all of the people involved in the Globe for the work that you do. There are no further comments, so while I have everybody on screen, I will ask you to vote on the recommendations that I read out earlier. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? I think that was everybody. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. That's 2:45. We're going to break for afternoon tea. We'll be back online at 3:05, please. We're good to start? Thank you. Thanks for coming back, everybody. Resuming our Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee meeting for the 13th of April. And we are at item 12 on the agenda, which is the Carcher Birch Trust Board 6-month report, 1 July to 31 December 2021. I understand, do we have Latham Lockwood online for the board? And Chris Smith, the facilities manager for council. Maybe not.
Latham seems to have left the meeting, Madam Chair. You may in the interim wish to move to the next item while we investigate.
We will see if we can get those back, and we will move then to item 13, which is the review of the city's 150th celebrations programme delivery costs and outcomes, which is a memorandum presented by Luke McIndoe, Head of Events. Luke, do we have you out there?
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We'll hand over to you, Luke, to present your report.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you, councillors. I've just got a brief presentation, which I'm just going to share with a little bit of additional commentary. So firstly, I'd just like to thank the steering committee for the 150th programme for their contributions throughout the year. I'd particularly like to thank the Mayor who steered this committee, alongside elected members Councillor Bowen, Councillor Hapeta, and a range of current and former council officers. Thanks as well to Warren Warbrick, who represented Toy Warbrick to produce the 150th tohu or badge very early on in the steering committee process. This badge was adopted by the council and amended for use within marketing materials throughout the year. iwi representation was provided by Chris Whaipu. He was invited to all committee activities and provided oversight to officers. However, he's a very busy man, quite often could not make those meetings, but he was fully informed and was provided the chance to feedback on the goings on of the committee. So special thanks to Chris too for making that commitment to us. The committee met monthly for updates on the program and to assess any applications to the Community Seed Fund. Discussions and decisions of this committee inform the work of council officers throughout the year. Strategic partnerships with the city. We had some strategic partnerships with city partners, FMG, Higgins Family Holdings and Toyota New Zealand. They provided the program not only with financial support, but an indication to us of their commitment to and pride for Palmerston North now and into the future. This support allowed for an increased community seed fund and assisted with the city stakeholder event held at CCO Regent on Broadway. Reference has been made in the report of remaining projects to be delivered. These projects will add to the legacy elements of our 150 year, including an anthology of local poetry, a photographic portrait and billboard collection of Pacifica pioneers of Palmerston North, as well as the tree planting program, which has been supported by the Lion Foundation. I don't have a firm time frame on when these projects will be delivered, but they have been promised. Just finally, the report highlights the struggles to deliver a year-long events program through an unprecedented pandemic. Hope the committee can find bright spots amongst that, including some thought-provoking community activations, an opportunity for a large number of community stakeholders to get together and celebrate the city's vibrant history and community networks at our premier performance venue, and legacy projects that will live on, including our very own Palmy Monopoly, and living reminders at every school in every corner of Palmerston North. So I take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I'll just take my screen down now.
Thank you, Luke. Particularly thank you being happy to answer questions. I have two, I think. First, maybe an easy is what will we do with the tohu now that we've come to the end of this program?
That's a very good question. It was provided to the city. It lives on. We did have one of the seed funded events provided a carved replica of the 150th tohu, which is living in the mayor's office at the moment. So that goes into the legacy heritage side of the year.
Well, I will hope that it gets captured on our arts list as well. And I suppose a broader question: you framed this by saying it was difficult. Of course, we know it was. But what learning do we take away from running this program that we might apply to future programs?
A clearer understanding of the why, I think, is very important, and getting community stakeholders on a lot earlier in the process. I think that's been highlighted through some of the media reporting around why 150th in 2021. So that definitely provides us some learnings for this kind of activity in the future.
I know part of our conversation was that we did our 150th in 2021, mostly because of when the 125th happened. So will we change what and how we celebrate in terms of city commemorations in future?
That conversation hasn't yet started, but I would hope that the results of last year would inform any future activities in that space.
We would all hope that, Luke. I'll open for any other questions, elected members. But there do not seem to be any. So, Luke, you might have got away with that one quite nicely. Thank you, Luke. There are no further questions. So we will move to the screen with the recommendation, please, Natalia. So the recommendation in front of us is that the committee resolved to receive the memorandum titled Review of the City's 150th Celebrations Programme, Delivery Costs and Outcomes, presented to the Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee on 13 April 2022. I'm happy to move it and we'll seek a seconder from the faces I can see. Thank you, Councillor Barrett. I'll open that for any comments. Yes, it was never going to be easy, was it, to run a year-long programme of events in the middle of a global pandemic? So good on us for giving it a go. And it was a programme of events that didn't come without some level of controversy, and elected members will remember that discussion from when this first went into the long-term plan. It started for us a conversation about what we celebrate and why, and I'm quite encouraged to hear those thoughts still coming through from the officer at the end of it. I hope the legacy of this is actually that we are more thoughtful in future about those questions, what and why, and how we take our community with us on that journey. I will also express thanks to the steering committee for the work that they did, and noting that that's another example of the difficult circumstances, that we had an entire change of staff at every level of that programme during the delivery of the programme. So it had its external pressures, but it certainly had its internal pressures as well. But I'd also like to pay particular thanks to Leslie Courtney, who was on that steering committee, who is now retired from her work in Council's Heritage team. And I think it was a very fitting programme of work for her to go out on. She contributed significantly to that piece of work, and it's in some way part of the legacy that she's left in that heritage team as well. So without any further comments, I think we will look to receive that report. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? I don't think so. No abstentions. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. We'll go back to item 12. Apparently our board member is now unavailable because the meeting's times have gone a little awry. I'm not even sure if we have Chris Smith on. He is there. Hello, Chris.
Killer.
Do you have any comments you would like to make on the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't have anything in particular. Just really to note that obviously we've been going through the 17A process, or with that outcome, and now we've been going through the transition process. And that's been a collaboration between the trust board and the officers. We are fairly well through that process now, and I think there'll be a report coming to council in time with where we're at, but I'm happy to take any questions if you do have anything that would be appropriate for me.
Thank you, Chris. And just noting that that report was presented by Hannah, and she's online as well if we have any questions. So noting, councillors, that this is just the 6-month report. There isn't a statement of intent for Coucher Birch because they will be in-house by the next financial year. So taking the report as read, just checking, question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chris. This may be a question that can be answered at this stage, or it may sit with the final report around the review process. But just with the actual cash assets, which are minor in the grand scheme of things, I suppose, but if there are cash assets left at the wind up of the trust's term and the beginning of council's full leadership of the Coucher Birch functions, will those funds be retained in a way that keeps their purpose focused on Coucher Birch, or would they end up kind of going into a general pool that would subsidize a wide range of council activity?
That's probably still to come out in the full process. So what we're looking at is essentially the trust is actually changing from a CCO trust to a community trust. So the trust itself will still exist. So we're still working through exactly what will happen with any essentially assets that are remaining with that. Stephen, I'm not sure if Stephen Ncea is here and might like to comment on that through Madam Chair, but just on where we've landed with that process at this point.
I'm not seeing Stephen online, so we might have to take that offline, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Chris, there aren't any further questions, I don't think. So thank you, Chris. You can step down. We'll move to the recommendation on screen. The committee recommends that Council receive the 6-month performance report 1 July to 31 December 2022, attachment 1, submitted by Coucher Birch Trust Board, which I will move. Seeking a seconder on screen. Councillor Meehan, thank you. And I will open that for any comments. It's kind of a sad moment, I suppose. For me as Chair of Arts, Culture and Heritage, that'll be the last 6-month report we receive in the journey that we've been on with Coucher Birch. I'm very hopeful for going forward. I've heard really great things from the community consultation that's been going on, that we seem to be taking the community with us on the journey. And obviously Coucher Birch has been impacted by COVID as much as all of our other CCOs, noting that they've had significant cancellations. But I also noted in their report that community use of the property has increased significantly over the period compared to last year. That does come at a cost. Community use generally doesn't bring in the amount of money that commercial use does, but it shows that our community are interested in that facility and willing to use it if we can get the delivery model right. So I'm hopeful going forward that Coucher Birch will go from strength to strength, just not under the auspices of this committee. So I will ask for a vote to receive that report. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Any against? Any abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you, Natalia. And that's to our last piece of business, I think, which is the committee work schedule, right at the back of your report. There are a couple of changes, and I've asked the general manager for the committee, which is Cheryl Bryant, to have a few comments on that, please, Cheryl.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to point out item 1 on the work schedule, which is about a report on resourcing required to ensure the city continues with 2 central city services for Anzac Day. You'll see by my comment that we haven't prepared a report for that. The forecasting was not required to run 2 services this year, given that the COVID situation and the impact that has had on NZDF and the decision that the Defence Force has taken right across the country around Anzac parades. So this year there will be 1 combined service at dawn. For next financial year, however, a program was put to the annual budget, and that annual budget is yet to be determined through the committee process and is currently out for consultation. So I am recommending to the committee that this item be deleted from the work schedule.
Thank you, Cheryl. And there was a question we put forward earlier in the week about a recommendation from the November meeting about the future of the old post office. Are you able to speak to why that's not on the work schedule?
That was an oversight. It should actually have been picked up and put on the relevant committee's work schedule. I do have David Murphy on the line here, though, if you want to ask any questions about that particular item.
David, are you able to provide the committee with an update on the old post office building?
Yeah, I can. As the Assistant Chief Executive said, there was an oversight that it wasn't added to the work schedule. I understand that communication has been that it will be added to the Planning and Strategy Committee work schedule. I guess one of the reasons it was a slight oversight was since that resolution was passed, there has been, while the workshop or report back hasn't occurred, there has been very regular engagement with the owner and the agent and potential buyers, and without revealing any commercially sensitive information, there was a period of time there, 2 or 3 times, where we thought the issue was going to resolve itself. It hasn't yet resolved itself, so we'll obviously have to address that in a workshop or a report back if it doesn't resolve itself. So officers have offered a package of support to the owner or a potential owner. I make it clear that support is through existing budgets and programs. And if there is a report back or workshop required, i.e. the issue doesn't resolve itself and someone purchases the building, we will need to be careful about what we can reveal in terms of what we understand, because officers receive what is commercially sensitive information about, who may or may not be interested in the building, what they want to do with that. So, in summary, while there hasn't been a report back, there's been a lot of engagement on the issue, but it will be added to the work schedule. And if it doesn't resolve itself, we will address it as directed.
Thank you, David. And I'll just say I have little confidence of the market resolving this issue. I'm hopeful, but I don't think we can wait. We need to be looking at what council will do, and that was the direction of the recommendation. A question from Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. It's a question around item number 1. So the direction from council was to look at the resourcing required to ensure the city continues with 2 central city services for Anzac Day. So that was not just this year and next year, but going forward. And I'm not 100% satisfied that putting money in the budget for next year addresses the issue, because then we've got to somehow remember for the following budget that there isn't money in there. So, a short-term solution, which is what this is, isn't necessarily going to give us a permanent answer, I suppose, is what I'm saying. So, after all that, if the report is taken off, how do we ensure that we have got resourcing for two services going forward, or how do we demonstrate that council wants to give that direction?
I think there are, if I may, Madam Chair, respond to that. There are a couple of avenues of this. If it gets approved through the annual budget, then officers will be considering bringing a program forward to the LTP. The other avenue is in the consideration of the annual budget when it's actually debated at council, that council has a recommendation that a program is prepared for the LTP. Both avenues would suffice. Or alternatively, if you want to keep recommendation one, we could actually prepare a report. It's the sort of third recommendation, but just trying to look for a simple solution that we can actually tie into an existing process.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I'm satisfied to hear that if the budget's approved, then that automatically would trigger another budget to come to the LTP. I was just concerned that it would sort of get, fall off the radar if we didn't have it. But I'm happy to hear that, and that satisfies me.
We'll keep it on our radar.
It won't fall off my radar.
Good to know. Question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Mr. Murphy's comments around the old post office and ongoing potential resolutions there. But just looking at the recommendation, which was speaking more to council's potential role and a specific subset of potential next uses of that heritage building, can I inquire as to the timing then of any either workshop or report to planning and strategy?
Mr. Murphy?
We can prioritise that. I think the options over and above what we've offered to assist with the market resolving the issues are effectively the council purchasing the site. So that would obviously be a relatively significant decision. So the collaboration on Streets for People, the bus terminal, heritage funding, design work has all been offered in the existing package. So I guess in short, the next step, if we weren't comfortable that the market was going to resolve it with that level of support that we've offered, would be to purchase it. So we can, that probably warrants, not probably, the direction is that we schedule a workshop or report on that. So I think we can prioritise that within the next month or two.
Thank you. Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett. Thank you for that, Mr. Murphy. And I will look to Deputy Mayor, who is in charge of workshops and also chairs planning and strategy, to advance that conversation. There are no further questions, so we will go to the screen with the recommendation. The committee resolves that the Arts, Culture and Heritage Committee receives its work schedule dated April 2022, which I will move. Councillor Barrett will second. Thank you. We'll go back to full screen. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Against? Abstentions? Carried unanimously. Thank you. If we go back to the screen. Good. Norera na mihi nui kia koutou e na mana e na reo. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you all. That concludes this meeting. I'll pass back to the Chair of Planning and Strategy, I think.